meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Trish.
Mrs. Brew?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Mr. Oja?
Here.
Mr. Pop?
Here.
Move on to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion on the approval of the agenda?
I'll make a motion, we approve agenda.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 19th, 2019. Were there any questions on the minutes? If not, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of August 19th, 2019. Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yeah.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
We're going to move on to the approval of the manifest. Scott, do you have any questions?
I have nothing for tonight.
Brett?
I have no questions.
Lee?
Yeah, I got one item here, just curious. Page 4, about halfway down, Stewart C. Irby Company. What's a Ocon Solid EPR for $7,400?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. That's all I have.
Jeremy? All right, and then Ray?
Yeah, the one item on here, on that same page, page 4, for L&S, I'd like to have that pulled from the manifest. It was for $9,642. We need to get an explanation from L&S, and I don't want to get that. I don't want that approved until we get that explanation. The total then on the manifest would be $751,197.59 if we pull that.
Do I have a motion on the manifest?
I'll make a motion, we approve manifest 2019-18 in the amount of $751,197.59.
Support.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Anyone wishing to address the council on any agenda item shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record.
Do I need to do that, or is this more on the property transfer?
Until we get to it.
They'll address it at the time of the agenda.
Move on to communications, approval, water department, assessment management plan. Mr. Anderson?
Okay, thank you. This past year, we've been working with GEI on the water asset management plan, and as I provided in your packet, the majority of the plan is complete at this time. They're still working on the copper rule connections, but that's ongoing at this point as a separate phase. What we need to do this evening is take a look. We had a chance to review that plan, and then especially the Appendix C, which is the 5- and 20-year capital improvement schedule. The Eagle, the old EQ, which is now Eagle, they're not holding you specifically to the capital improvement plan. What they do is they want to see that you're trying to address the improvements, but it's based on year to year with the capital improvement budget. But we do need to approve the acknowledgement and moving forward with that 5- and 20-year plan. There's a letter that I've penned that's in your packet that we're going to send pending council approval, and that will satisfy that portion, or the final portion of the AMP. So I can answer any questions if you have them at this time?
Well, I would like to say it's very impressive work done by GEI there, but I'm going to go back again, which I've been harping on this for years, and this here, it says in the fall of Great Lakes and Energy Eagle now, which used to be DEQ, formerly known as the MDEQ, requiring development and submission of a water asset management plan, AMP. They always got to have these. I realize we have issues, but I take this as a mandate, and I am dead set against any mandate. If they mandate it, the state should have to pay for it. I'm sick and tired of mandates, and we have to do this and we have to do that.
Any other comments, questions? If not, do I have a motion?
I make a motion that the City of Norway Assessment Management Plan, specifically the 5 and 20-year capital improvement plan, the rate structure development, COSTA, and methodology, and the well exploration report prepared and submitted by GEI consultants be approved.
Support.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
No.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Move on to approval, Sturgeon Falls Hydro Joint Funding Agreement.
This is an annual approval contract that we have with the, for the Sturgeon Falls Hydro for a stream gauge. This particular, there's a resolution attached for your pleasure, Resolution 2019-22, and it's with the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS. So it's something we do on an annual basis.
Any questions? If not, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion, Resolution 2019-22 be approved.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Communications Department.
Okay, we have a number of, we have a contract, actually. We're going to reapprove an agreement that we've had with Packerland Broadband, but it's actually with Astria, the new name. We decided that we need to have this agreement brought back forward to recognize, even though I think legally, and I guess, Grant, this will be in your purview, but as a DBA, we probably were okay with the services agreement that we had, but it's probably better that we go ahead and get the master agreement reformatted to reflect the new name. We also have addendums 1 and 2, which has part of the original plan is we had the master services agreement, which can't handle all the terms and conditions, and then we use the addendums to handle our pricing. Corey Heigel's here tonight. He can give some answers to any questions you might have with those two addendums. They're basically moving forward as we did in 2015. You can see we got terms of 24 months on addendum number 1, and with addendum number 2, what was the term on addendum number 2? I think it was also 2 years, 12 months? Okay. So, I don't know, Corey, why don't you come on up?
What were the previous prices?
The prices are the same for addendum 2. Addendum 1 went down by 50 cents a megabit.
Went down by what?
50 cents per megabit per month.
When we originally started in 2015, the monthly service charge for bandwidth was quite a bit higher than that. That's actually been coming down, and that's the latest pricing. Yeah, it was up over 12. So we're at $7.50 at this point.
So the monthly service for the modems, that's the same, but the
Price per megabit.
went down. What about the the monthly service charge for the digital channel transmission or the video?
Stay the same.
our terms ran down on those addendums, so we're bringing them back.
Right, I was just,
Add new term.
but nowhere in there it said what the old price was, so I was just
Okay.
seeing what they were comparing.
I don't know, Dan?
Any other questions? Thank you, Corey.
Just for council's information, I suppose, Mr. Anderson referenced the original master services agreement. This was sent over the other day. We originally had this with Packerland. It simply is a reflection of the new name, since this was coming forth anyway. I thought it made sense after the presentation about the new branding or the new information. It doesn't change anything. One of the things I did ask, and Mr. Heigl made the reference on page 2, the original agreement, the master services agreement that the council had passed was, I believe it might have been a 10-year agreement. It was for a certain time period. So what we did was look at the amount of time we've done so far and referenced on page 2 of the service period to reflect what was left of that original contract as well, which is 66 months, which is left. So this is simply the same contract that was previously provided and approved, just with a different name. It was with a DBA. This is also a DBA. It's as much just for continuity and clarity for public records and for public to be able to see who it's with as things move forward.
If there's no other questions or comments, do I have a motion?
I got more for Ray. Looking at your write-up, there's addendum 2, but it's also listed as addendum 3. Is, when we're looking to pass it, when I look at the addendum 1, it's service item 1 and 2, but then I don't see anything referencing the second addendum that we have that you have listed on the write-up here as addendum 3.
Trish, is that something that was modified on Friday?
Yes, that should say addendum 2.
Because I don't, in the contract itself, I don't see addendum 2. I see addendum 1 and then service item 1 and 2.
So that instead of addendum number 3, that should be service item number 2, I assume?
I see what you see to your left.
Okay, we have an addendum number 1, which has 2 service items, service item 1 and 2. Under the report, on Friday, it was added an addendum number 3. I don't believe, did you send an addendum 3 to that? That's the digital?
Addendum 3 is addendum 4, is yet to come. You and I have a little work to do.
So we're not approving addendum 3? So we're not approving addendum 3?
All right. Do I have a motion?
Well, still one other thing with that, because in the contract, there is only one addendum. There's addendum 1, 2 service items.
I was not here on Friday. Trish and Corey were handling, revising the report. You guys got to help me out here.
But what is listed here as addendum 2 isn't in the contract. What's listed
That's the video transport. You say we're not going to do that right now.
Come here for a second.
Because the direct internet access and the internet or phone internet modem subscriber 476 are the only 2 addendums.
Let these guys, I wasn't here on Friday, so I mean,
The only typo is that sheet 2, okay? But he's also talking about, now this. And I don't know. So he's saying that this is addendum 1. And this is
So there's 2 mistakes. One in the report that was written and prepared for you as approving. That should have said addendum 2. The other items is service item 2, which you caught earlier. Up at the top, it says addendum 1, so these are typos. This is formally addendum 2. That is the heading.
But I don't see anything in the contract for the digital cable transport hosting services. I don't see anything, the only addendum in the contract that we have is addendum 1 with service items 1 and 2, which are the 750 and the 476.
You're not asking to pass the transport, video transport right now, right? Correct?
We can postpone that.
Right, so, because we don't have that addendum, so,
It was sent there, there's some problem. So we can.
yeah, it wasn't provided to the council, so, so we're gonna pull addendum number 2, and we're gonna pass addendum 1 with service item 1 and 2.
Service item 1 and 2, yep, that's what we have.
There was a couple of versions going around here, I think we just got printed out incorrectly.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right, so do I have a motion with just addendum 1, right?
Addendum 1 with service item 1 and 2. Service item 1 and 2.
I'll make a motion that the Astria Master Service Agreement be approved, as well as addendum number 1 with service item 1 and 2.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Minigini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. Move on to Communications Department Viacom Video Agreement.
Okay, this is something that we have to discuss. We received a communication from Viacom and the NCTC, National Co-op, Video Co-op that we are a member of. There's a new agreement for the Viacom channels through the NCTC, and we have until the end of September to sign on in order to carry the Viacom channels. Question has come up as to whether or not we want to sign that agreement, because it would be a 5-year agreement. As I laid out in the report, those particular channels are the music channels, the MTV, the VH1, does include Nickelodeon, the Paramount TV Land, Country Music Television, Comedy Central, Nick Jr., Teen Nick, and then there's a number of other channels on the digital package. The total cost for that is about $7.36 currently. The question is, and this is a question that came up because Astria has decided, they did some work, did some surveys of their customers, and the question came up as to whether or not the customers were okay with, if they wanted those channels to remain, or if they were okay with having those channels eliminated to carry that savings. And we need to ask that same question, because now they decided through that survey, and again, Corey, if you're available to talk about the survey, I'd appreciate it, because it wasn't just done on a whim to save money, it was actually done, the customers came back, and I think only 1% said that they absolutely wanted those channels. Yeah, come on up. And so we've been going back and forth for about 3 weeks now, and it really just needs to come to council, and we have to decide what direction we're moving with it.
First of all, to be clear, we've decided to discontinue. We will not be opting into another 5-year agreement for those channels. Although we transport that video signal to your customers and through your network, we can still carry that signal to you. So there's no risk in us discontinuing it, that if you decide to move forward with that Viacom bundle, you wouldn't have the signal you need to do that. So we took 3 things into consideration as we came to a conclusion on that decision. Number 1, does the content bring value to our subscriber base? So we tackled that, number 1, by providing surveys out to our consumer base and getting a pretty good response on it. The second thing we considered is the overall price of our content. As all these channels start charging more and more, it forces us to increase our video rates. You guys did a pretty hefty rate increase last year. At some point, you're going to have to reopen that book and wonder if you should be doing it again. That's just a fact of life. We decided that it's been too many price increases for our customers to provide content to them and can keep forcing content to them. So we have to look at the type of content that we're providing so we can keep the prices down. The third criteria that we looked at is we, again, are more of an internet company than we are a video company. That's the way of the world. It's just that's just a fact. We need that space, any space we can get that's consumed by one channel in the spectrum of overall available channel slots for internet. We need more of that. And by removing a bunch of channels, we can future-proof ourselves and not bind ourselves contractually for another 5 years and limiting the use of our own spectrum to provide a premier product, which is the internet. Surveys overwhelmingly said we wouldn't mind losing those channels, I'm paraphrasing here, if you didn't hike our rates again. So that's the moral of that story. So we've taken a stance on replacing some of those channels, because again, we want to keep as much open for the internet as possible, but through planning, we figured we can replace 4 of those channels with some free or reduced cost on content that's similar to those channels.
So it cost if we decided to opt in, it would cost us or the customers $7.36
Yeah,
per month.
per household.
Per month.
Per customer per month.
With probably going up in January.
Yeah, when I looked at that price charge based against the total cost, because we're basically passing the channels through right now. We've got pretty much a zero margin on any of the video side. And so, you know, any increase is going to have to go directly carried through. And that's about 8%. You know, one of the options, and I gave you about 4 options, and one of the options was, you know, we anticipate over 10%, 8 to 12% is probably a pretty consistent annual increase with these video channels, at least. So, you know, what we could do is, you know, that usually comes in January. You could hold that rate, your current rate, for another year just by losing these channels. Now, I mean, we've talked about the content. You know, I mean, we realize there's a couple channels in there that probably have some following. Like any channel, I mean, any channel we take away has some following. So, you know, you have to take that into consideration.
It wasn't an easy decision, I'll tell you that. We had a lot of stressful meetings discussing about it.
I think the hardest part in this conversation is the 5-year agreement. I mean, so if we opt in, which we very well could, we opt in, and we aren't going to review it now for another 5 years. So.
And they can increase it in that 5 years.
In your contract, your 5-year agreement, there'll be an escalator each new renewal year. So that's mapped out, so you can at least budget and plan for that. But what you don't know is all your subsequent bundles of, like, NBC Universal is going to be a big one next year, as, excuse me, NCTC members we have to deal with too. And they got a lot more channels in their suite than Viacom, and a lot more popular ones. So we were kind of preparing that they could stick us a pretty good increase, and we're probably going to have to take it.
Well, no matter what channels you eliminate, you're going to get some complaints.
Absolutely.
And I'll complain first because I like Paramount. But not the $7 a month. You said you did a survey. Who did you survey? Where? I mean,
Our consumers,
your consumers, which is basically
all over rural northern Wisconsin and upper Michigan, so similar communities.
similar communities. Yeah, you didn't actually do it
You
here.
didn't do it here in Norway.
Or Iron Mountain or Kingsford. Iron Mountain or Kingsford, you must
We
have
wouldn't
known.
reach out to your customers on our behalf. Sorry? No, it was not Iron Mountain or Kingsford. Little communities, our
Just little.
customers, what their value streams are.
How long do we have before we,
We have to decide by the end of September.
what's our next meeting?
September 23rd? Yeah, September 23rd is our next meeting.
Could we have a public hearing on that, if people want to put their input, or?
I mean, it's up to you. You could have a public hearing. We're going to have to make that decision though pretty quick, you know, from that date.
What does everybody want?
I'd like to see the public get a chance to say.
Yeah.
At least get it out there what channels we're looking at dropping.
Right.
Give people a chance to respond either at a hearing or just letting City Hall know.
Yep. Agreed.
And because it's not formal, we don't have to have the 2-week published notice or any of that with the hearing. Would we?
That's what I was suggested, so at least our citizens and our customers have a chance to voice their opinion.
Then I'll make a motion, we table this until the meeting on the 23rd.
You guys good with me?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Who supported?
I will support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Move on to approval of property transfer approval.
Grant, you want to take this one?
Sure. So previously, the city council has executed agreements with, in this case, a developer way back years ago. I think it was Lakeside Builders. They developed property in our community, and with the development, there was caveats included in rights of reversion with the sale of certain parcels that we were looking to require that buildings be built on the properties to avoid vacant land or people making purchases for the intention of speculation. If the council recalls, a few years ago, Lonnie Hale and his wife purchased a parcel from that Lakeside Builders section. As contained within that, there was our typical reverter language. Mr. and Mrs. Hale had some things come up that precluded them or at least slowed them down from building a home or a structure on that property. They did come to the council, I believe it was just about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and asked for an extension. Council heard their request and the reasons for it, and the request was granted. I think that my understanding is that some of those same issues had continued with the Hales, and they have not built anything on the property at this time. In the meantime, recognizing that they were going to have some of those problems and have some of those issues and trying to be, look ahead, they were proactive to put the parcel on and listed the parcel for sale. The City of Norway has contained within the original purchase agreement, we have the ability in the oversight of the parcels and approval of any transfers. So it has a couple of different effects. One is the council gets to determine whether or not, first and foremost, the first question is, would you sign off on the sale, the proposed sale? I learned about this a little while ago. Joe Harto is a proposed purchaser, actually his father is the proposed purchaser. There was proceedings with the real estate agent, and they contacted, I think Ray actually, looking to find out what was going on, and got me up to speed relatively quickly. We drafted the paperwork that was included within your packet tonight, folks. So the council first, there's the 2-year reversion that Mr. Hale was under, I think expires here in November, if I remember correctly. Mr. Harto is here today. He has presented a site plan. He has met with Mr. Anderson pertaining to his plans to immediately construct a home. Has submitted that information, has submitted, I believe, a permit application in anticipation of this happening. Is ready to close. But before that takes place, we have the proverbial blessing of the city council to approve and gets to decide whether or not they will allow this to proceed, if you will. Because there's a relatively quick turnaround with the original extension by Mr. Hale being granted, I think it's November, if I remember, November 1st, 2019. Mr. Harto has indicated he plans on building immediately. That being said, obviously with the weather and the unknowns of the UP, even the best of intentions might not work out as well as he had hoped. So if it was a simple transfer, he'd be taking it pursuant to the original reversionary language of Mr. Hale's deed, and that would present problems for Mr. Harto, and I presume he may or may not proceed with the sale, knowing that he has approximately 2.5 months to build and have a permit for a home. So he has presented, and his Realtor has presented to council for approval. And with that, we've utilized in the past a multi-party agreement when there are sales like this. Basically, the intention is to make sure that Mr. Harto knows the reverter language and the requirements, that up there in that area, there are certain covenants and zoning. It's zoned in the city of Norway. References under the multi-party agreement, references the original multi-party agreement that was done way back when Mr. Oliveros was here, and just references some of the requirements or some of the limitations, of course, on the property. And then also the proposed deed that is done up that includes the reversionary language. And Mr. Harto is here. I don't know if the council has any questions, but I think most of the information contained in the packet's relatively straightforward. But because of the reversionary language that Mr. Hale currently has, Mr. Harto is asking for consideration to extend that out just to be on the safe side in the event something goes sideways or something unexpected happens. I believe he was asking for a two-year extension and start anew, but I think his intentions are to have it built here as soon as possible, but knowing that sometimes things happen. So, Mr. Harto?
I mean, I'm serious about building a house ASAP. The basement's already paid for, no liens, and the house is paid for. I have the title for the house. It's a prefab manufactured home, just like what's across the street. That's going to be put in there. My intentions, I would have already had a basement, and I already had the guy, if I didn't know about all this stuff I had to go through, I already had his forms up there to start pouring concrete. So I am very serious about this. I've been looking for property like this all over Dickinson County, and when I run into this property, I jumped on it right away and made a bunch of offers and made a deal, and I ended up finding out that this stuff was going on here, so I just couldn't start digging a hole and I couldn't close on it, but I want the city to know that I'm really serious. The house is paid for, I have the title for it, the basement's paid for, JDM concrete, and I've already filed all my variance permits and my compliance permits. I paid for it all, and I hope they grant my compliance here.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the council?
Just to make sure here that there will be no, or should I put it, no precedent will be set by doing this if we transfer it to him.
There's always going to be arguments, there'll always be discussions, there will always be, there's no precedent or binding effect, but it's something that if another citizen came along, I'm sure they would bring it up, and I think it would be considered. Each of these agreements is an agreement with the buyer, if you will, and the city council. It's a contract. And it's, you bargain in each situation individually with the individual, but it would always be something that would be brought up, I'm certain.
I'm sure it will be.
In the future.
I'll make a motion that the property transfer request be approved from Mr. Hale to Mr. Harto, and that the deed reversion documents attached be approved.
Support.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menefee?
Yes.
Anyone wishing to address the council on any item of interest shall do so now. State your name, address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes.
Mark Polani, 1051 Murray Road, Norway. I got some questions about Mr. Brew's department and some of the project that was done with the fairgrounds. Mr. Anderson, what did that project consist of, and what was the amount total on that project?
Do you want me to go back and forth and answer?
No, you can do it in comments. Just write down what you asked.
What was that, Ted?
He'll answer you in our comment time.
Okay. And then the other thing that I have was, I know it was stated to me that it was for the loop. The loop, my understanding for the electric went down Fairview. A couple months, or a couple years ago, the city did some work out there, out to the fairgrounds from Fairview, like by the grandstand. That amount, I would like to see what that was, because I don't believe that was billed to the county. The meter socket is on Fairview. And to the best of my knowledge, that from the meter socket in should have been billed to the county, and it was not. There's several meters on the south side meter sockets on the south side of the grandstand that don't even have meters on them. So we just had the fair there, and so that must be put up there for future use. A couple years ago, we did some work out at the campgrounds for the county. I'd like to know what the amount was over there for the water lines. That was forgiven. About 50% of it was forgiven. To the best of my knowledge, that was about $12,000. I'd like to know what that amount was that was forgiven. You know, this, I'm guessing about $32,000 that was just forgiven. I was told it was forgiven to the county. We're $32 million in debt. I'd like to have that verified through the treasurer or the city manager. That's $12,800 debt per resident. I don't believe we should take the electric purse when we got major hydro project going on down there, flip the purse upside down and shake all the money into the county's pocket when we got bills to pay. The debt in the electric department totally goes against the electric customers. We're affecting the rates by giving the county all of this cash and doing the free work. You just okayed $30,000 worth of brushing work along the lines, yet you send the city crew out there all summer to the electric crew out there to work on this project, and you're not going to charge, and we're going to pay for the brushing. Then you go back and we get billed, the fire department gets a $450 bill for setting up at the fair for the fireworks fundraiser. Come on, we give them the equipment out there to use during the fair, city's equipment, and they bill us for the fire department's.
Mark, is that it?
Okay. Well, that's not it. Then I got 3 minutes. I'd like to get some answers on the debt.
Anyone else? We'll move on to mayor and council comments. Scott?
I just have one comment. Ray, I got received an email stating that issue with that paper mill, Menominee or Marinette, whatever it was, about the sludge that bringing it to Quinnipiac. Well, I thought the big thing was them bringing it to Quinnipiac was due to the fields down in Menominee County being wet. They haven't started bringing anything yet, but now they are. Saying the state's saying they have full approval. Why are they doing it now? Because the fields aren't wet down there. There's just something fishy going on with that.
Yeah,
With the local people telling them, no, they're not doing it no more.
Yeah, I don't know all the details of, they submitted for a pilot project for their sludge to go into that particular landfill over at Niagara Paper. And I just received and put in the packet about that they got it approved. They got the pilot approved. So they gave us warning that they were going to start. You might start seeing some of the trucks coming in and out. The bottom line is that, that particular roadway, whether all the way from US 8 all the way through to Quinnipiac and back out to US 2, that has been labeled federal aid route for many decades.
Well, I know when we met as a committee up there in Kingsford there, there was supposed to be talk with Champion Universal about taking that road in between.
Yeah, and that was part of that discussion, but, they're moving forward on this pilot. They can't wait for Verso, because Verso at this point is not interested in having that discussion.
Yeah.
To put a roadway across their eastern side of their boundary, of their property. So, the Kimberly Road, all the way through, like I said, all the way through Quinnipiac, that is a qualified truck route. The corner on US 8, that was one of the major discussion points. Most of the time, the trucks won't use that because that corner is not adequate to make the turn. But in this case, what they talked about doing was coming in to the site in Quinnipiac and then exiting, down through Kimberly.
No, our road is wide enough, safe enough for this?
The roadway is. We have questions about the shoulders.
Yeah.
They've got it labeled as a bike route, so we have questions about that. But, I mean, as far as the designation, though, a truck could go through, without problem at this point.
Do we know how long the pilot program is for?
We do not. I don't have the
When
specific
they figured once
information
the
on that. I
pilot,
just got the
that
notice.
it's gonna be okayed for everything, the way they were talking in that meeting.
Yeah, we did not okay any of it. I mean,
No,
We
yeah,
made it
I just
very
want the
clear to
public to
them
know
that we
that.
didn't,
We didn't okay any
we
of
didn't
that.
No.
okay any of it, neither did Brighton Township. So they have to go back through the county, through the solid waste planning effort.
So we don't have a choice in the matter,
No, we do not.
because they got
And I just hate
approval right
reading
from the
emails, and that's the
state.
same with Lee, when you're talking about, we're basically mandated for paying these things, and it's, here, you guys are taking it no matter what. I
Right.
just-
But over the years, the roads were improved using federal aid money. And that's where, we did accept the money, same as Quinnipiac, they accepted the money to make improvements to those roads.
Okay, that's all I got.
For sure they'll be coming out our way?
That was the plan
I know that wasn't
when we
the plan,
left,
but-
that was the plan, but like I said, we don't have the authority to stop them, and
Well, I thought that the main guy that was there said it'd be easier coming out rather than turning up.
Definitely. But just because he said it'd be easier, don't mean they're gonna do it.
You know?
And
They're
assuming we got
professional
the
drivers.
email, so they're
Right.
coming,
you see the date on that email, I mean, we just received it.
Yeah.
So we didn't have any chance of having
Yeah.
any dialogue with
Maybe we
anybody
just
on that
have to
side.
complain louder than Quinnipiac, because they don't want anything to do with it either.
Right.
I mean, if it has to be done, fine, they gotta come through us, empty, not full turning that corner off 8.
Brett?
I just have a question. Can I get the years of when the electrical upgrades started and the water upgrades started at the fairgrounds? Doesn't have to be tonight, but I'd like them years when that started.
Lee?
First, number one here, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Pop on his first win as head football coach for Norway. And I definitely went up to Munising, and I enjoyed that game more than watching my Lions yesterday. Okay, and then compost site again. Every time I go out there, I just can't believe the mess. There was a guy out there the other day, and I thanked him. He was cutting up 12 and 14-inch box elder in 4-foot lengths. Somebody must have dropped a tree out there with at least 8-foot lengths to them. I mean, they're 12 to 14-inch diameter. Thankfully, the guy took them all. He was cutting them up where he could handle them. And there's another big stump out there that magically appeared. And we're gonna have trouble getting rid of that stuff. Okay, I got one more item here, and I'm gonna get a little political on this one. All you people pay attention to what your representatives are doing. These two, our two, were not involved in this. Now, here's House Bill 4727, introduced by Representative Kyra Bolden, to require, now require is the same as a mandate. The state will pay for legal aid to illegal or undocumented aliens subject to deportation. The state would have to provide this either directly or through a contract with a nonprofit agency. Referred to committee, thank God. And I just, guess who's gonna pay for it? That's all.
Jeremy?
Just one thing, I know was it last year before, with the spring, there was some issues with the valve. When we're getting to when the spring is gonna get shut down here at some point, not this month, but we're getting there. Has there been anything done with that, going forward for any kind of repair?
Well, we haven't come up with a conclusion on that at this point.
The only question I have, did we hear anything back from Leadestrobe on that second, thing that they were gonna check on the shaft? You know, when we approved it for the shaft to be checked, the other part of it, the extra part?
I'm not sure I understand what your question is.
Remember last meeting when we approved to, check the other part of the shaft that wasn't checked?
I haven't had any conversations from the last meeting with Stephen. He's been on vacation.
Okay.
You know, so I haven't had a chance to have a follow-up on that particular question.
Okay. That's all I have. Mr. Anderson?
All right, the question was raised about the fairground project. The city owns the lines inside, or owned the lines inside the fairground, period. All of that infrastructure was in very, very, very bad shape. When we went in and worked on that project this summer, there were lines that when we started disconnecting, I mean, they were close to coming down. There were poles that were in very bad shape, being held up by the wires. If something had happened in that fairgrounds and somebody got hurt, that would have been on the city. So that particular section, that particular system is the same as any one of our other lines, extensions, like Purdy Lane or Vulcan or any one of the other areas that we go out and we provide upgrades. That was the whole emphasis of the project, was to upgrade and get that hazard out of the fairgrounds. Bottom line. As far as some of the other questions of the Fairview Loop, same thing. We were actually preparing, you know, that Fairview Loop for this conversion, which is to get us out of the fairgrounds. So it's not an upgrade, like a development upgrade. This is a system upgrade that we have. Again, no different than if we come through Kimberly Road or Purdy Lane or any one of our other area extensions. So if you want to know the cost of the materials to do that job was $38,000. And that would be no different than if we, you know, worked in any other area. So I think it's disingenuous to say that we did it strictly because the fairgrounds wanted it underground. We did it because it is a safety issue. It was a safety issue out, you know, with the fair and with any other activities that are going on. Outside, alternative to that, or with that, the amount of times that we ended up going out on calls, whether it's because of activities at the track or at the fair, where we had power surges, we had power outages, we did come out and spend time, you know, addressing our issues within the fairground area. The whole idea on this project was to get that work underground, clean up the meters, put the meters on the outside of the facility like any other development, and the responsibility from this point on is the fairgrounds in Dickinson County, period.
But if something would have happened out at the fairgrounds and somebody would have got hurt, them lines were our lines.
They were our lines, and that would have been our liability,
Our
period.
liability.
That was my concern with it, was that, so in the future now, if there's fake repairs of that, that's gonna be their cost.
That's theirs,
Because that was my concern, because we were doing this work on somebody else's property.
right.
For our benefit, but also their benefit.
We want to get off of their property.
Right, so that's the direction we're gonna be going at. So is this infrastructure gonna be turned over to them?
That is
that's now
correct.
there? Are they gonna be buying the infrastructure from us, or just turning it over?
At this point, it's at council's direction, but at this point, we're turning it over to them.
That system was taken off of the loop about a year ago. When that was taken off of Fairview, that was when that was put in. a year ago.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
No, we
No, we
have
have-
closed session.
Okay. There was meter sockets added.
Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
It was an upgrade totally for the fairgrounds, not just to maintain the line.
Do we have a motion to go into closed?
I will make a
session?
motion, we go into closed session
For manager evaluation.
for manager evaluation.
And I agree to go into closed session.
Are we
For my
going to adjust
evaluation.
the debt?
Mrs.
number?
Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
I did fail to mention the debt number. Can I
Okay,
address
go
it?
ahead.
The question about the debt. The debt is broken up into each department. When we have utility projects, the utility covers or handles the individual debt as a revenue bond, revenue debt. The theory behind the revenue debt is that, like in the water system or the electrical system, if you have an upgrade for a 20-year, 30-year, and like even in water and sewer, where it can go 50 to 80 years, that if you save the money over time to do the project without debt, that the users are going to pay into, we're going to end up taking the monies that we would have, like right now, we're paying off the debt, that money is going to be used to put aside so that we aren't going to have the debt. But yet, the current users are not going to see any benefit off of the upgrade of the utility, okay? So, when it comes to utility debt, which is over 80% of the debt that we have is through the utilities, and it's probably even higher number than that, because I don't have that number right off the top of my head. But that particular debt is current ratepayers are paying that because they're the ones taking the benefit of the project. When you look at your own personal situation, there's not many people that buy a house without getting a mortgage. And there's very few people that buy vehicles, that can afford to buy vehicles without taking a car loan. It's a very similar situation when we talk about utilities. We do agree that out of the 35 million, we have $11 million in pension debt. That is poor, bad debt. And we're dealing with that. That wasn't created overnight, and that won't be solved overnight. Okay? No, you have, let me finish.
Mark,
Let me
him
finish. Okay, so out of the general fund, which is taxes, there's less than 3% of the debt is through the general fund. Okay, so yes, the number is 32 million, but out of that 32 million, you have over 10 million that's in the electric department, and it's on the revenue debt. It's on the revenue bond debt. And it's managed in a way that it does not create a spike in rates to cover the debt. It is handled so that we can have a long-term viability, and our current rate customers are taking advantage of the upgrades in the system. Same as water and sewer. So the current rate payers are taking advantage of the debt. So that's the answer on the debt.